From the table. Josh, come. Just stand right in front. Jeremy said it best in terms of there is the old guard and there's the new guard. These are the faces of the new NAACP. It's what we do that will determine where they will take this organization. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Got work to do, bro.
So what I want to say to us in the room that's younger than me but older than them, let's set an example. Let's show these young people that we can come together, that we can sit and have an intelligent conversation and collaborate around our problem. My son is a public school teacher, and he said to me, "Dad, do you know what a good parent is?" And I said, "Yes, a parent goes to school, checks on his kids, etc., etc." He said, "Oh, no, that's not a good parent." He said, and he meant it, satirically, of course, but he said, "Here's what a good parent is. A good parent is a parent that comes to the school once a year, they curse the teacher out, and they go home and you never see them again." To him, that's a good parent, because he doesn't have to deal with it. A bad parent, he said, is the one that is in my face every week, that is at the school at all times, wanting to know what's going on. Let us not be by that example. Let's not come out and just raise a lot of noise and then leave. Let's learn to solve problems, and you do that by stepping up to the plate, saying, "I don't like the way things are, and I want to see a change." Yes, sir.
I think, in my opinion, the most important thing that we can garner from this meeting is the importance of the right to vote. If we do not understand and do not implement the right to vote, we are asking for a problem. Every one of us, I think we need to ask, each person needs to ask himself and herself, am I a voter? And if you are not a voter, you have no say in your government. You have no say in anything. The importance of you becoming a voter is absolutely important. You have to be a voter. And if you are not a registered voter, then get off your butt, get registered, and start voting, especially since we have this election coming up very soon. The right to vote is absolutely important.
Yes,
You cannot underestimate the importance of that. And every elected official knows that. If there's anything that he fears the most, is the fact that when election time comes, you are not voting for him or her. That's what moves them, that's what motivates them, so you have to get out and you have to vote. If you don't do anything else, you must vote. And if you don't do that, you don't have any right or say in anything, really, because the leadership is looking after you or is going to work for you only if you are a voter and you do vote.
Okay, the next question.
My question is, I've only been here toward the last 45 minutes, but I seem to not understand why are we jumping over the real issue on why we're here in the first place. And the real issue is the discriminatory practices and the discrimination and the racism that's in the educational system from the beginning. And what I mean by that is, what are we going to do here? Because I do what I can do, and I do a lot. Now, I'm not going to go into that, but you can't blame police, whether they're, doesn't matter what color, because I know there's black officers that are worse than white officers, so I'm not going to go down that line.
Okay.
We're talking about the way that most people have been taught. Number one, stop lying to our kids. Like you're a law enforcement, I'm a truth enforcer. And we all didn't come from no slaves. So let's stop that. Let's stop calling our kids minorities, because that's not true.
It ain't true.
Let's stop telling them from ex-slave. I'm giving you a solution what I can do, because I'm mentoring, I got a radio show and a whole bunch of stuff I do. I teach, and I teach facts about us and our story, and our true history. It gives us pride and dignity within ourselves. You don't have to worry about us doing anything stupid.
Okay.
One of the reasons why they're doing things is because they're lost. And the educational system has lost them because it's unfair to them. And you younger people, you're going to have to listen to your elders.
Amen.
You can't disconnect the elders from the new generation, and the older generation. We're going to listen to you, but we got to work together. Because this thing, the same thing that's been going on 50-something years ago is still going on today. So the question is, what are we going? I just said, what are we going to do to push the educational component? That's the root cause of discrimination and racism in the eyes and minds of all people.
I will answer you. What we can do, we can sit again, and if I have to say all night, we can sit as a community. We can sit as a people. We can have a discussion. We can talk about what do we want in terms of education for our children. What do we want our schools to look like? How are we going to go about doing it? There are very bright minds in the city of Bridgeport that has a lot of education, has a lot of experience, that can help us design a program that can move the agenda forward. But you have to be able to sit and have a conversation. You have to start with a conversation. And then from a conversation, develop a plan.
We got all these buildings. We got all these abandoned buildings, all this space in Bridgeport. I'm telling you what I could do. Give me some space. I'll mentor and teach you free. I ain't gonna cost the city a dime. I'll give you my name and number. Because we can't wait for votes. We can't wait for elections. Politicians have never solved our problems, and they never will. The people from the streets, the people from the neighborhood, we're ready to do something. Give us some space.
Preach.
Come on, man.
I gotta say this, so I want to bring you back here because it's not necessarily you're making a bad point, but Wilfredo Matos and the Black Panthers and Craig Kelly and people like that in the city of Bridgeport, they were already talking about that. The young lady that bought the Boys and Girls Clubs, let me give you a good example. You've got students at Bullet Havens Tech right now who need to practice their craft, electricians, carpenters, people in training. Now, it's not just about taking that space and saying, give me that space so I can mentor in it. Create a space for those young people to apply their trade so that they actually now have job experience that they can point back to and say, well, what did you do and how do you know that you're able to do this? See this building over here? We put it together, this community, our young people. And then what do you do in that space? You allow those same young people who are in music and arts programs to teach and exist in that space. I'm not saying not to build a but what I'm saying is our history teacher too, personally, you missed the point of the program when we talk about that. But as a history teacher, as a history teacher, let me let you know all those secrets, which you should know. Booker himself, Harold Washington, part of what he had to do in order to get through segregation was to say, use segregation to your advantage. If you don't want to come fix the school, we'll fix it. Just give us the license to the building and watch us do it. That's the key. We'll put the paint up, we'll do the electrical, we'll do everything necessary. But now you can't come, once it's done, you don't get to come and tell us what happens in this space.
No, that's actually, I'm telling you, we're going to have one more response to your question by Reverend Williams, and then we're going to go to the next question.
Oh, just quickly, Dr. Williams, you have a job answering. What I just want to add is that with the idea of us working together, the idea of us having the education issue that you mentioned, we have to take a key role in educating our people. As the church, and that's from my perspective as a clergy person, we as people have to take a preemptive role in educating our people about our, and you're right, our history doesn't start on the west coast of Africa where we were taken as on slaves, but it goes back to we being the creators of civilization where the pyramids and where the ancient Greeks and Romans, they mythologize and they talk about the value of Ethiopia and Egypt, and we have to be able to teach that because in a system where their education is taught to glorify one type of dominant culture, we have to use our subversive voices to show that we are actually the standard bearers of culture, that we as Black people, we have the image of God. We get down in that ancient land is where we are not subjugated, we're not second class, but we are actually those who pioneered civilization. We have to teach that. And we have to teach it. We can't expect a public system or some system that just has a vested interest in keeping people down to teach that. We have to do
that. Young man on my left, would you guys ask your question, please?
Thank you. God bless everybody. Thank y'all. Excuse me. I just want to say that I'm the proud son of one of the original men that sat under that tree here at Newfield and realized that they didn't have to be sorry for each other, but through empathy, as Mr. Meekins, the president of the Eastern Community Council, has right on his window, and I'm a proud worker of his food pantry now for a few years. I'm legally blind, 70% of my sight is gone. And they decided that they wanted to do something that I'm at an awe, excuse me, I'm tripping over a word, but that they had the right to do. Where firefighting here started in 1776, the original people of color. We weren't firemen until 1983, early 80s. But them men decided that they didn't have to be sorry for each other. They knew that's something that they wanted to achieve, and they made a way that now all of us can have to choose to become a fireman. And I just like us to realize that most of all, it's going to do, as the gentleman, they made it so clear, it's going to depend on how much we care about ourselves and how much we're willing to put into our community, as well as Ms. Lady that spoke. Because we have such an opportunity. You are the majority on the southwestern coast, where in America, there's only two places like this. Where Snoop Doggy Dogg is, and where we're at, in Fairfield, Connecticut. Do we want to take advantage of this, or do we want to let foolish envy and jealousy, split us up and decide I'm better than him because I'm doing this, he's less than me because he's down here? Or are we going to be able to judge each other from the content of our character, not by the clothes on our back?
Amen.
Thank you, sir. We have 4 people standing. Mr. Caviello, then Mr. Hodges. And we want you to ask questions.
Who is he? Mr. Charles Caviello. He's running for mayor. I know, he's recognize. Oh my goodness.
And I've been active for 45 years that I've ever seen in this city. I have 2 questions to ask. One is to Mike Bailey. The other is to the entire panel. I've attended. I have attended with Ernie Newton, I must have been over the last 3 or 4 years, everything is gone. And there's one thing I've noticed about the courthouse. And that is that the only people that look like most of the people in this room are the people being tried and in front of the judge. And then the only people that look like me are the people that are the judges and the attorneys and everything else. And I want to ask the panel, this is where the question comes in. What can we do to change that? And the second question is, and now I'm going to put the paper to the fire, there are a number of people that are running for mayor in this city. However, if you read the newspaper, there seems to be only 2. And putting the paper to the fire, right? What can we do to change so that the citizens know who the choices are? All the choices. The paper needs to let us know that. Okay? But I really would like to have that first question answered first, because that, to me, is something that just needs to happen in this country. Not just in Bridgeport, but in this country. I was in Hartford and I noticed this. In this country, okay, we need to know how we solve that problem. Because I know there are white folks getting in trouble. They just don't end up doing the thing in court the way they do it. Okay? They end up walking away or whatever. And we need to, I need to know, why is it that that's happening? What we can do, or what you can do, to change all that.
I think, Charlie, I know you came in a little late, but I think the answer to your question has been answered in more than one way. But I think that the final answer to your question was previously stated. If we don't like who's sitting on the bench, if we don't like the fact that we don't have enough black prosecutors and enough black attorneys, then all we gotta do is get up in the morning and go look in the mirror. The answer is there. And it starts with us voting. And then after voting, hold people accountable. I think Mike Daly has answered the question when it was asked of him about Juneteenth and what gets into the paper and what doesn't get into the paper. And he turned it around and said the onus is on us, that we have to bear the responsibility and hold the Connecticut Post accountable and to make sure. But I'll let Mike answer it.
Yeah, my answer on that question is inadequate. I wasn't happy with it either. But you know, it does come back to the voting and the political structure. There's an old line I heard when I was a young reporter. You work at Sikorsky for 40 years, you get a gold watch. You work for the Democratic Town Committee for 40 years, you get a black coat. So that may be a bit of an overstatement, but the judges, God bless them, they're honorable men, but they come out of a system that is what we've been talking about all night. This is where judges and I don't know about prosecutors, I'm sure they're far more competitive sort of thing, but it goes back to the political process. And as I said before, there are a lot of different segments of society here. But at the end of the day, it's the people that you and I have voted for and given power. We've given them power, and they use it the way they see fit. And in Bridgeport, you've got sort of a power structure that, you know, the status quo has been working pretty good for them for a long time. So they're not looking really for much change. And the power of that change is in your hands. Walking into that voting booth. No, we're not going back. We got a guy that we've talked to, we're supporting, he's going to do what we've asked him to do. You know, he's promising to do it, and that's who we're voting for.
The Assistant U.S. Attorney and then Attorney Tisdale.
And I think everything everyone's saying about voting and working together and coming together as a community is really important. But as a woman that works in a traditionally male-dominated environment, I think that what I talked about before pervades everything, and that's the unconscious bias. There is a bias. In our office, you know, and I think prosecutors and judges are traditionally white males. And I think what's the most important thing that you can do as people in Bridgeport here today is understand that with unconscious bias, what you need to do is work with the people that have unconscious bias both ways so they get to understand each other, meet each other, talk about these issues so that they become conscious and they can stop doing it. So anything we do from our office with the police department, we're going to be doing things in Bridgeport and we're going to be asking the community to engage with us. We want you to come. We want you to do that. It's important. It's important from our side so that people can understand your perspective and learn to trust each other both ways.
Excuse me, I don't need to be
Wishful thinking.
Into what I want to ask. So this is for the Caucasian on the panel and in the room. So we keep hearing that we need to work with you and things like that. Are you willing to bring these kind of discussions to your community? Because we know what the problem is. Across the nation is white people talking to white people. I appreciate you acknowledging the bias. I appreciate you acknowledging the systemic racism. I appreciate you acknowledging the white privilege and the white supremacy mindset. But you're talking to the people who know the problem. Are you willing to bring the conversation to your community, talk to your people about what they are blinded to? Are you willing to do that? That's my point.
Just to build off of what the assistant U.S. attorney said and the one in the back, I'm reminded often, I grew up in Brooklyn, right next door to Bridgeport, upper middle class, white community. We don't have these conversations. I don't live there anymore, but before I lived now, we don't have these conversations. And when we do, we get very uncomfortable. And I remember not too long ago, I replayed for some people, white people, right, in the family and friends. I had a relative who went to prison, okay? And he was arrested, went to the criminal justice system, crimes committed, and ultimately because he had the financial means to hire a good defense attorney, got a really good plea deal. I just remember a little bit of time, right? Came out of prison, did the probation thing. Now he got off probation about a year ago, right? Making about $70,000 a year. Got a good job, a baby, a house, a family. And I asked the question at one point, would this be the case if he was white?
No.
Right?
No.
And I got a little, I got a pushback at a panel I went out where I used the same story to say, you know, I've constantly been asking myself that question, would this be the case if he was black? And I think the truth is no. And the pushback came from, well, it has nothing to do with race, it has to do with socioeconomic status, and it has to do with, you know, he has the financial means. And yeah, some of that's true, right? But what we know in this country is that black and Hispanic people in general are of lower economic status, right? And therefore the system works against them. And so trying to have this conversation to say, not that I wouldn't want this relative to be successful, to be able to come out of the system and provide productively for society, right? But I want that for everybody. And the truth is that at some point, a white consciousness needs to recognize that that's not happening. And until, you're right, we have those conversations and people get uncomfortable, and white consciousness wakes up a little bit, right? They don't want change. One last piece, right? Stuff happened in, I think, South Carolina, not Charleston, but where the officer shot the individual running away from him.
Scott.
Yeah, wherever that was down. I had a conversation with a relative, Walter Scott, thank you, with a relative, right? And all of this stuff is happening around the country and on the news with regards to police and race and right all. And the conversation was from this individual, I just don't understand, why was he running away, right?
Why wouldn't he run
and when
away?
you go to white communities, that's what you hear. Because their experience with law enforcement, right, is very different than the experience of people who live in Bridgeport or a black male's experience with law enforcement, right? So I understood that this person's intention wasn't bad, right? Their intention wasn't, you know, he deserved to be shot. It was, well, I would never run away from a cop, because that's what my experience has told me, right? We don't, you're right. You know, the unfortunate thing about this event today is that there aren't other people from other communities to listen to you and to, you know, to break the, what we call the cycle of socialization, right, which is fed by fear and ignorance. And so you got to get out there. And, you know, I hate that everyone keeps putting it back on you. I'll take some responsibility for myself and for, you know, the people that I interact with. But, you know, we can only do so much. Hopefully we don't get discouraged from having conversations with people because they're afraid of what they'll think or what they'll say.
Thank you.
I mean, you got this question.
Is it pertaining to this?
Yeah, it's definitely pertaining to this. I see the panel.
One of the things that I want to point out is that you've heard the different perspectives on this panel.
Mr. George needs to talk about it, and he needs to let the speaker open up too. Because see, this is why everybody act the way they act because it's in the way city. Right. They want to hear what they want. Let the speaker.
But it's actually where it all comes together in a different way. When you look at the policies which are made, in other words, one of the reasons you had the new Jim Crow, one of the reasons you had enhanced incarceration, is that the policy, let me show you a simple policy. The simple policy that came down in terms of the so-called drug was that they were going to arrest a street level drug dealer. Now, they